breaking news from CBS 2.
Folks that are
Good afternoon. I'm Erica Sargent. We are breaking
really
into the talk to bring you a special news conference. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot speaking now. She will be joined by CEO of Public Schools Janice Jackson. Let's listen in.
Tomorrow. I want to thank Dr. Jackson and her team, all the CPS teachers, support staff, nurses, and janitors. This is really uncharted territory for all of us, but I am incredibly pleased at the level of responsiveness that we've had from all the people within the CPS family and across city government to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to really support CPS in this time. As the governor announced on Friday, the schools across the state will be closed for at least 2 weeks. Since that announcement has been made, people have been working literally around the clock and throughout the weekend, and I should emphasize that CPS always has a contingency plan. We started thinking about this over a week ago and making sure that we had that contingency plan ready. So while there was work that needed to be done over the course of the weekend after the governor's announcement, the plan that was in place is one that is being actually implemented now. We have to make sure that we are fulfilling our promises to our children and our families, regardless of how long our students are out of the classroom. As you know, CPS serves approximately 40 million lunches and 20 million breakfasts annually. Every student can receive these meals during the closure, and Dr. Jackson will talk more about the specifics. Families will be able to pick up meals, and making sure that we are doing what we can to provide parents and families with food security as one of our top priorities. We are partnering with the Greater Chicago Food Depository, and we're looking at other ways in which we can really make food pickup and delivery as seamless as possible. The Chicago Park District will provide enhanced programming at 18 designated parks throughout the city from 9 to 5, and they will also be part of the food delivery system. To find a location, visit www.chicagoparkdistrict.com. Do not send your children to schools because they will be closed. The only things that schools will be open for is to provide delivery food services. I encourage people also to vote early. This is the last day for voting early. There's very limited lines, but I want to make sure that our election goes off without a hitch. We have a lot of additional support for polling places, for additional election day judges. There is a team of people that will be working from the mayor's office to help support the Board of Elections in this challenging time. And while we are also working to make sure that we are, as a city government, again, providing people with additional supports, enhanced sick leave, as well as teleworking, we're going to be paring down to most essential services over the course of this week. But everything that we do, we want to do it driven by the science and the data. We want to do it in a thoughtful way that provides the relevant stakeholders who are going to be affected the opportunity to absorb the information and then make whatever accommodations they need to their daily work life. And at this point, I will turn the podium over to Dr. Jackson. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize there are other folks here. Dr. McDade, our Chief Education Officer, Civil Madison, Deputy Mayor for Education and Human Services, and the Medical Officer for CPS, Dr. Ken Fox. So with that, Dr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Today I'd like to provide some additional updates as we are on the brink of school closure tomorrow. First and foremost, as you just saw, the CPS Command Center is open for business. This Command Center will be open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily, Monday through Friday, and people can reach the Command Center by dialing 773-553-KIDS. Again, that's 773-553-KIDS, or by using the email that we've set up, familyservices@cps.edu. As you know, all of our schools will be closed starting tomorrow, as well as our offices throughout the district. We want to make sure that families understand that they should not send their children to school. It is important to note that this scenario is unprecedented. This is not like the strike. There will be no adult supervision at the schools to support the students, so we are imploring families not to send their children to school. The district will, however, be providing food at all of our sites, and families will be able to go starting tomorrow, March 17th at 9 a.m. through 1 p.m. each day. We will be able to supply up to 3 days' worth of food, breakfast and a lunch, for every child that lives in the household. We will also have safe passage workers on duty during this time to ensure that families and students are safe as they travel to and from their homes to the schools to pick up meals. Starting today, students will also be able to access grade-level enrichment activities at school. I want to thank our teachers, many of them who worked over the weekend to prepare packets to distribute to students today. We'll also make sure that all of that information is available online at their schools. For families still looking for more information about coronavirus, please visit our website at cps.edu/coronavirus. Finally, I want to briefly address the new cases related to schools. I understand that people have additional questions, but we are entering a new phase of this pandemic, which is why our schools are closing tomorrow. People need to stay healthy and follow the guidance that they are receiving from CDPH. CDPH and healthcare workers will ensure that individuals with new cases understand what they need to do to keep themselves as well as the people who have interacted with them healthy. We need to look ahead to the future and ensure that we do not stigmatize members of the community by revealing their identity. Nothing is gained by outing people and identifying them as potential patients. We cannot threaten their privacy. We must protect their privacy, and we have to ensure that they don't lose more as a result of us disclosing too much information. I want to thank the dedicated staff working here in CPS, especially this emergency team, as well as the individuals working in our command centers. We have people who are working every single day on behalf of the children and families in our school system to make sure that they are safe and fed throughout this crisis. Again, I want to thank Mayor Lightfoot for her leadership, who brought this city together to make sure that we're coordinated in our response to the pandemic. As a parent and leader of this district, I understand that this is a very difficult time for all of our parents and families, which is why we're committed to keeping people updated throughout this crisis. At this time, we will take your questions.
What can you tell us about the case at Sheridan?
I think we've shared all that we can say about that. We did notify our families yesterday that there was a case. We made the move to close the school today in order to, ensure that we did not continue with the spread. But one of the things that I want to note is that by all accounts, and I'm no medical expert here, we know that we will continue to see more cases rise. And I think it's important that people understand that there is a shift. With all of our schools closing, there's no need to identify individuals and try to track people down and figure out who they're contacting. We've taken this unprecedented step to ask people to stay home, and anybody with symptoms should follow the guidance that CDPH and CDC has put out with regard to coronavirus.
Let me, if I can, just clarify. So what the normal protocol had been when we saw cases affecting CPS was to close the school, do a deep cleaning, and then CDPH would perform its investigation to make sure that they understood the possibilities for exposure to the virus. Now, obviously, CPS will be closed through March 30th. In the event that somebody else in the school community closes, all these schools are going to be cleaned over the course of this time. But the normal investigation of the who, what, where, and when of how somebody came in contact with the virus, that, of course, will continue.
Mayor?
Yes. Heavy sigh. Yesterday was a better day, definitely, in part because we had a contract with DHS that they activated and signed, and that allowed for CFD EMTs to be on site, but there's still a lot more resources that need to come. My understanding is that the Vice President had committed to the Governor that they would double the amount of resources that were at O'Hare yesterday. I don't believe that happened yet, but But we certainly, I think everybody understood that what happened Saturday night could never be repeated again. The feds control that side of the sterile area. So we have pushed them, and I think they've been responsive. Our airport authority, our commissioner, has a great relationship with people that are on the ground here. I think they understood, and they were very candid when I was at O'Hare yesterday and saying that they dropped the ball, but they understood and have learned from that. So our expectation is that we will continue to work cooperatively and better than what we saw on Saturday night, but we still need additional screeners at the airport. I don't think the federal authorities understood that when they added the UK to the level of countries that were going to have to be screened, that the volume would jump exponentially. What we also saw, my understanding is, some people were leaving Europe, flying to Canada, and then coming into Chicago. So that was another source of the large number of people that were coming in mass. What we've asked the FAA to do, and I believe that they've activated this as of yesterday, was to obviously be mindful of how many people are coming, what the flights are, what the timing are, and regulate that, but also not to just let people deplane and to be standing in these big concourses waiting to be screened. We've asked, let's keep them on the plane. They're comfortable on the plane. They can get access to bathrooms, water. They can sit. So bring them off when they're actually ready to be screened. And yesterday, I think the lines were no more than about 30 minutes, as opposed to 3+ hours that we saw on Saturday night.
Mayor, the CDC is offering guidance, no large gatherings of 50 people or more until May. At what point do you have to make a decision about canceling classes in April?
Well, if you look at the CDC guidance, it actually has exceptions to it, one of which is for schools. So we're looking at the guidance. Our folks are on the phone literally every day. There's a standing call with the CDC to make sure we understand that we are also giving them feedback about what we're experiencing here in Chicago. So I think we've got a good working relationship with the CDC. This is an incredibly fluid situation, which is an understatement. Even over the course of the weekend, literally hour by hour, things are changing. So I don't want to get ahead of myself and predict what may be happening in April, because as a matter of fact, it's hard for us to predict what's going to happen 1 or 2 days in advance. I think we've now kind of reached a good place where we've shut down a lot of activities, but if we need to, we'll go further. But I think we need to let people really socialize the changes that have already been made, even since Friday, closing the schools, closing of bars and restaurants. This is a big, big deal. And I also want to be mindful of the fact that we have an economy that is really being hit from a lot of different sources. So we need to ease into this and let people understand what the new reality is for their lives. But certainly, we're literally monitoring this on an hour-by-hour basis, looking at the modeling and some predictions of what we think the arc of this virus is going to be. And we'll be, as with everything, we'll be driven by the data and the science.
Mayor,
go ahead.
The curriculum over this time is not going to be graded, and I was wondering what you guys think about that, if you think if there might be some exceptions, if teachers really want to grade the work.
Sarah, I saw your tweet. So are you asking for yourself or for the public?
The kids think it's fantastic.
Okay.
That's a problem, right?
No, it's important to note that what we have stood up with our e-learning platform is really enrichment. We cannot mandate that those assignments be graded and incorporated into a student grade. However, I do think that teachers will be using all of the tools at their disposal to encourage students to do it. As a parent, I will say this, I'm not popular in my house, but they should be doing it anyway. And there's a lot of talk about learning for the sake of learning, so this is really an opportunity for people to apply that in their homes.
And I would also just add to that, I got an email from a friend over the course of the weekend who set up kind of a daily plan for her daughter to make sure that there's no slippage, and that's a real thing. To the extent that parents and guardians have the ability to do that, having a goal for each day while the students are out makes a lot of sense to me, and unfortunately for Vivian Lightfoot, we're going to be imposing that in our household.
Mayor, when it comes
Yes,
to
sir.
other closings, things like movie theaters, things like theaters, and there's different cities are doing different things. We haven't gone that far yet. Where are you on looking at things like that in like City Hall?
Well, I would say this, a lot of the theaters, for example, both movie theaters as well as cultural theaters, a lot of those places have actually closed down for some period of time. You know that last week Broadway went on hiatus for a period of time. Our great theater culture here in Chicago has also, I think, taken some of our lead. I'm aware of some of the museums are also closing down. Look, I think people recognize this is a highly unusual time, and that the best thing that we can do in the short term is follow the guidance that we've been given. We obviously announced closures of any events that are 1,000 or above, and really trying to place limits on 250 above as well. People recognize that we are taking these seemingly drastic measures in order to save lives. We have looked at the arc of this virus in terms of what happened in other countries. We were walking along the same path, for example, as countries like Italy. And that's why looking at that data and to see the number of cases on a day-by-day basis where we were at the same time as where Italy was at the beginning of this virus really taking hold there, we knew we had to take some very drastic measures, and we're not going to hesitate to do more if it's necessary. But as I said, this is a big shock to the system for a lot of folks. And what we need to do is make sure that we're continuing to be consistent in our messaging, consistent in what individuals can do to help themselves, help their families, really reduce the spread. And we'll keep looking at other things that we may be doing to support this effort. But I think we're in a pretty good place right now. But again, as I said, we're going to be assessing this on a daily and really an hourly basis. And if we need to take additional steps, we will.
Thank you, guys. Is the city considering relaxing parking restrictions to allow delivery drivers to be closer to wherever they're, dropping off and picking up?
We already announced some relaxing of that over the weekend for night deliveries to grocery stores that were really struggling to get deliveries and make sure that their shelves are restocked. We're looking at actually a range of different things that we're putting some finer touches on, and we'll be announcing those later this week. We've got to do everything that we can to make sure that, one, the public is protected, that we relieve the burden of city government on folks at this time in particular, and that we do everything that we can to support businesses, and particularly that we support healthcare workers. I think Fran had a question.
What do you say to people who are coming to the city council?
Hold on, Fran. Let me just go ahead.
What do you say to people who are planning to come to the city council?
Don't come.
Tomorrow?
Watch. It's Wednesday. The committee meetings. They shouldn't come. A lot of the city council committees and city council itself are live stream. There's 77 libraries that are open and lots of other opportunities for people to view them on the live stream. We really want to limit the amount of people that are in the building on a day-to-day basis, but particularly for city council, where, as I mentioned last week, we're going to be putting some seating restrictions in on the second floor as well as the third floor to limit the amount of people that can be in there, and so that we are practicing social distancing. We have some important things that we need to get accomplished related to the city response to coronavirus, which is why we're going forward on Wednesday, but we're going to go forward in a very streamlined fashion. So folks who are interested, please stay home, watch it on the live stream. We're going to be making provisions if people want to make statements. They can do that and submit their testimony in writing, but we really, really encourage people to view the city council proceedings through the live stream and not to physically come to the building on Wednesday. Go ahead, Fran.
I was going to say, I wrote a metro train this morning that was literally empty, and I'm sure the CTA is the same. At what point do you slim down the CTA schedule or close it down? And secondly, is there anything you can do to help these restaurants? They're going to have a very difficult time surviving
Yes.
this whole thing if it's prolonged,
Yeah.
because they operate in such slim margins?
Right. Well, let me take the last part of your question first regarding the restaurants. We've been in conversation with a number of different restaurateurs of all sizes and the Illinois Restaurant Association to address precisely that question. And we are looking at ways in which we can provide some supports to these workers because they do live paycheck to paycheck, particularly the workers that are relying upon tip wages. We know that this time is a particular hardship on them, and so we're going to be working not only to put city resources to help them, but look to the business community and others to provide some support. So we need to put some finer points on this, but this is something that I'm hoping that we'll be able to announce in concert with the Illinois Restaurant Association later this week. Regarding public transit, it's still critically important that public transit is up and running. On the CTA, and I believe that this is also true of Metro and Pace, we're taking additional measures to make sure that public transportation is clean, that we are providing additional personal sanitation devices and equipment at the various stations, but we have to keep the public transit system going. I'm not aware of any public transit system in the United States, and I think only one in the world that's actually shut down during the course of this pandemic. People need to be able to get to work. Lots of folks depend upon public transportation to get to and from, and again, you're going to hear me talk a lot about our healthcare workers. Many of those workers depend on public transportation, so we got to keep it going and functioning. Now, part of the reason I think you're seeing diminished capacity perhaps in Metro is because a lot of employers are doing what we're going to be doing in the city, which is encouraging workers to work from home, to make sure that we're setting up IT systems that can accommodate teleworking, and that's a good thing. We do want people to limit their movement to and fro, but for some folks, that's just not an option. They've got to go to work, and our healthcare workers in particular, for me, are at the top of that list, as well as our first responders, whether it's police, fire, EMT, call takers, dispatchers. Those folks are on the front lines, and we're doing as much as we possibly can to support them as well. Yes, ma'am.
Getting back to the kids.
Yes.
Families are going to be getting in lines to get the food. Is there anything being considered as far as social distancing?
Oh, of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Precautions that we can expect to see?
We've set this up so that it is grab and go, so that's going to limit interaction and touching between the individuals picking up and those that prepared the food. We're also stationing these pick up and go spots right outside of the school, so we think that that's an additional precaution. So we feel pretty confident about that, and we're limiting social interaction as much as possible.
And keep in mind how this virus is spread. It's not airborne. It's not casual association. This is spread through droplets, through sneezing or coughing, and you've got to have some really up close and personal contact with somebody who is symptomatic in order for that to be spread. So I want to make sure that we're continuing to disabuse people of the notion that you can get the virus through casual contact. You cannot. That's not the way in which it's spread. It's somebody sneezes, somebody coughs, you're in immediate proximity to them when that happens, or they don't wash their hands, or otherwise cough into an elbow, as we teach our toddlers to do. So if people are exercising good hygiene, and if they're washing their hands, if they're using alcohol-based sanitation devices, that is going to significantly limit the spread, but it's not airborne like measles. So I want to make sure, because there continues to be, I think, a lot of misinformation about how the virus is spread, so we just need to be clear about that.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Did you have one question? All right, you'll get the last question. Go ahead.
Is there any district efforts that is being considered currently to provide devices to students who might not have them? And second, we're getting a lot of questions about the need for volunteers for food distribution or anything else that the district is doing. Are you looking for that?
Yeah, so right now we have a pretty good handle. Obviously, tomorrow will be our first day to see if we need additional volunteers and support for food distribution and to distribute the homework packets. As far as devices, many of our schools already have devices that they allow students to take home, so I would imagine today some of those will be distributed, although that's not ubiquitous throughout the district. We have reached out to the philanthropic community to identify ways in which they can support, and some of the ways that we have identified is to provide devices for students to have, not just during this crisis, but indefinitely. So we're waiting to hear back from folks on that, and we're also looking for help, support with our more vulnerable populations, in particular our students in temporary living situations.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
You have been listening in on a press conference, a joint press conference with Mayor Lori Lightfoot and the CPS CEO Janice Jackson. They've been discussing specifically the impact on schools. The CPS schools will be closed tomorrow per the governor, and now they've been preparing to do that. We have a number on your screen here. This is coming from the command center, 773-553-KIDS. That is available for parents and anyone with questions about how this will work as they go forward with closing those schools tomorrow. One of the top priorities, Janice Jackson and Mayor Lightfoot said, was to emphasize do not send your kids to school tomorrow. This is an unprecedented situation, this coronavirus pandemic, so it will not be like school strikes before, teacher strikes. There will not be administrators and teachers and other staff there that can take care of the kids, but they said that they are making arrangements for kids to come to the schools, or actually the parents to come to the schools and get meals for their children. Now, this emphasized the CPS schools they were talking about, but one of the other highlights that the mayor mentioned was the change in resources at O'Hare Airport, those 3-hour lines that they were seeing. Now, she said many of them are down to 30 minutes, but it's not enough. She is still asking the federal government to double the resources at O'Hare and so many other things that the mayor and many other leaders are looking at as we deal with this pandemic. Now, we will have a press conference from Governor J.B. Pritzker. That is coming up at 2:30, so we will bring that to you live as it happens, and all other developments. You can find that as well on cbschicago.com. For now, we return you to The Talk.
This has been breaking news from CBS 2.